Hello, I'm Dane, and this is Dane Explains. Anyone who's watched my channel for a while will know that about every 6 months or so, I release a compilation of shorts. Actually, 2 compilations of shorts. One centered on my theology shorts, and the other centered on my science shorts. Well, it's that time of year again. It's the beginning of summer. Last week, I did my science shorts, so this week, I'm doing my religious shorts. These videos are a compilation of select shorts that I've done in the last 6 months. So, without further ado, enjoy the shorts. The topic of removing Pope Francis from the papacy has come up. Could the cardinals do that? Pope Benedict IV. He acted like a spoiled teenager. Eventually, all his scandals led to him deciding to sell the papacy to his godfather, Pope Gregory VI. Decided cleaning up the mess his godson had made was too difficult. So Benedict IV returned, the King of Germany, traveled to Italy to resolve the matter. The council deposed Benedict, and Gregory was guilty of simony for buying the papacy. They convinced him to resign. The next pope died a few years later, and Benedict quickly stepped in again until Henry came back and kicked Benedict out. Not once did a legitimate pope get removed. Benedict was deposed twice, but neither time was he the legitimate pope. Has the church come up with a better process since then? Well, no. There have been 2 ways popes have left the papacy: by dying or quitting. However, there may be another way, but has never been used to remove a pope. If the pope becomes a heretic, he would cease to be pope. Then he could be deposed. Today, I'm going to talk about schism. What is it, and why is schism different from heresy? The Great East-West Schism, which is what led the Orthodox churches to no longer be in communion with the Roman Church. It was caused by the Pope trying to promulgate his ideas to the entire church. The patriarchs in the Eastern churches didn't like the ideas, or that the Roman Pontiff was trying to push them on the whole church. This started a tit-for-tat between the Pope and the Patriarch of Constantinople that eventually led to the Patriarch rejecting the Pope's authority. So what we have is just a schism. In many cases, people who adhere to one group can even attend the services of the other. The next big schism was caused by heresies, however, and that was the Protestant Reformation. The Church tried to resolve the issue of the Protestants and their heresies, but eventually just excommunicated them all. So to sum it up, heresy is either a rejection of a belief that the Church teaches, or choosing to believe in something the Church rejects. Schism is the rejection of the authority of the Church. If God is so good that he's called all good, then how could he make a bad place like hell? Hell is also torture for the demons as well, because they both hate God and want to be with him. A good analogy is how people often hate their exes, at the same time as wanting their ex. But they want their ex to be the way they want them, and not the way they are. The thing we have to remember is, punishment isn't evil as long as it's just. So hell is a place of punishment because of God's justice. Think of all the evil people who committed unspeakable crimes, only to kill themselves just before being captured in order to evade justice. Spoiler alert, they failed. During the moment of judgment, the judged will feel the complete penetration of God's knowing, and the damned will want to flee from that. Imagine if you abused somebody whom you saw and liked. After that point, in spite of the fact you want that person, you would also be driven to avoid them. No one in hell wants to be in heaven. So hell exists because some beings God created do not want to be in his presence. IVF has been in the news. The state of Alabama gave embryos personhood status. But why are the two related at all? When I was a kid, IVF was a fairly new thing, and everything I saw and read about it cast it as a good thing. But the picture of IVF that was painted made things seem more ethical than they actually were. An analogy is a bloody revolution. Lots of innocent people die, but the revolutionaries see their deaths as acceptable. They don't actually just fertilize one egg and implant it into the mother. What they normally do is fertilize many eggs and place them in the uterus in batches. This can go on more than once if it doesn't take. And if too many take, the doctors will usually encourage the parents to eliminate some of the fetuses via abortion. There is more to this as well. One of the reasons why contraception is immoral is because it separates conception from the most powerful ability God gave us. IVF also separates conception from the procreative act by making conception happen outside of it. The power that God gave us to create another living soul should not be taken so lightly. A friend of mine said the only legitimate Old Testament books were referred back to in the New Testament. Are they? the 7 additional books in the Catholic Bible, are called the Deuterocanonical books. The Dialogue and Wisdom 2 clearly describes the Pharisees that had Jesus crucified. To Matthew 27:43, one of the hecklers inadvertently uses the phrase from Wisdom 2:18, if he, meaning Jesus, is the Son of God, then God will deliver him. This gets to why the Deuterocanonical books are in the Catholic Bible, but not in the Protestant ones. The canon the Jews accepted did not include the Deuterocanonical books. The Jews excluded the Deuterocanonical books after the rise of Christianity. Prophecies in them fit Jesus too well. When the early Protestant reformers examined the canon, they did not like how many of the passages in the Deuterocanonical books agreed with the Catholic Church. Does the New Testament refer to the extra books in the Catholic Bible? Yes, because those books are the ones that led up to it. This week is the celebration of the ascension of Jesus. We know the souls of the people who ascended are in heaven, but what physical space are their bodies in? So where did these people's bodies physically go? For Enoch and Elijah, we know they didn't actually get to heaven. Jesus hadn't even come yet to cleanse them. This is speculation, but I think God separated from their bodies at that point, at least until Jesus. After Jesus, things got a lot more clear. The gates of heaven are opened, so their souls can enter it. John was given the vision he recorded in the book of Revelation. It mentions that a small number of people will be resurrected to reign with Christ. This seems to imply these lucky people will be getting their bodies back before the rest of us do in the next chapter of Revelation. John sees a new heaven and a new earth. He also mentions that he sees a new Jerusalem coming down from heaven, so that may indicate the city already existed in heaven before the end. This not only gives Christ a place to reign before the end, it gives the bodies of those he assumed in heaven and those he resurrected a place to physically reside as well. There's a place the devil doesn't want you to know about, and that place is hell. Quite a few years ago, I had a coworker who claimed to be a Christian. One day, religion came up in conversation. He was surprised that I believe in hell. I was even more surprised than him that he didn't. I mean, it's all over the place in the Bible, right? But he thought any good God wouldn't create such a place. At least half the people who call themselves Christian either don't believe in hell or don't believe God would send anyone there. The Bible specifically states that Judas was lost. So we know for sure there's at least one guy in there. The idea that people can't go to hell is a lie Satan has been working for millennia to convince everyone is true. Atheists, and as I pointed out, many Christians, don't believe they could end up in hell. Going further, why would you even bother being Christian? Because if there's no hell, everyone's going to heaven anyway. Removing hell completely undermines virtually every aspect of Christianity. This is why Satan is more concerned about your belief in hell than your belief in God. Because if you believe in God, but don't believe in hell, he's already got you. Catholics think Mary is the Queen of Heaven. Why is that? The practice of calling Mary Queen of Heaven started to become popular long before the Protestant Reformation. It was officially adopted as a title for Mary at the Council of Ephesus in the year 431. There are even references going back all the way to Origen of Alexandria, barely more than a century after Jesus. The angel Gabriel stated during the Annunciation that God would give Jesus the throne of his father David. So, Jesus is a king in the line of David. The king would not just have many wives, but many concubines as well. This would make who was queen and who wasn't a complicated matter to figure out, so it wasn't one of the wives who was considered the queen, but the king's mother instead. But is there any reference in the New Testament? In Revelation 12, John sees a woman clothed with the sun, standing on the moon with a crown of 12 stars on her head. She's clearly being depicted as a queen. John describes the woman as pregnant and giving birth to Jesus. So the Catholic idea of Mary as Queen of Heaven is pretty well founded and goes all the way back to the Apostle John. Why is God still punishing us for Adam and Eve's sin? This isn't how original sin works. Adam and Eve were born with something called sanctifying grace. Basically what that means is if they died, they would go to heaven. This grace was given directly to them by God when he created them. After Adam and Eve, God was no longer creating humans, at least directly. Adam and Eve had to, participate in the procreative act. For their children to get sanctifying grace, it would have had to be passed down to them from their parents. Since Adam and Eve had no sanctifying grace to pass on to their children didn't get any. So it wasn't that we have Adam and Eve's sin, it's that we couldn't inherit the sanctifying grace they no longer had. Imagine if one of your ancestors had been extremely wealthy, but they squandered away all the wealth before they had any children to pass it on to. Their decision to squander their wealth is not on you, but it still affects you because you no longer have the opportunity from birth you would have had the wealth been passed on. That is how Adam and Eve's original sanctifying grace was. The church does still have a court system, and they do still use it. Most of the trials people have heard about in the past didn't actually occur at the Vatican, and the laws being exercised were actually not church laws, but the laws of the nations the heretics and schismatics were being tried in. So, for the most part, the Inquisitions of the past weren't church trials. Many aren't aware that the Vatican is actually a micro-city-state, with the Pope as its head. As such, it has its own laws and even its own courts, although it doesn't have a prison. If someone is convicted of an imprisonable crime, they are sent to an Italian jail. People accused of schism or heresy are tried by a civil court. Thankfully, capital punishment has been abolished for a long time, even in criminal cases. Archbishop Vigano was summoned to appear for trial at the Vatican. They're accusing him of rejecting the authority of Pope Francis, and the validity of Vatican II. However, even the most outspoken schismatic probably won't have to worry about a Vatican trial for schism. So, I think they just want to make a bit of a show of it as a warning to others. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, and other topics ranging from theology to science, please press the like button. Subscribe to my channel and ding the bell to get notified when I post new videos. Also, please support me on Patreon to get extra content and special perks. Link in the description. The more people support me, the more time I can dedicate to making videos like this one. So, until next time, have a great week.